You are never alone. You are never alone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for staying with us. Welcome back. Time now to introduce you to our distinguished guest panel. We have with us Sheikh Hatem AlHaj, Dean of the Sharia Academy of America, and he's also a pediatrician. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh, and thank you for being with us. We also have with us Mr. Hisham Hassan, and he is a self-development coach. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Hisham. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Sheikh, allow me to start with you. When we talk about how to parent our children from the viewpoint of Islam, when should we be friends with our children, play with them, and when should we impose our authority, and what should we do with our kids? I mean, the kids we want to be, but maybe by instinct we want to see them better than us in the future.
Alhamdulillah, well, the answer to this question depends on multiple variables. One of the variables is the age of the child. One of the variables is the particular circumstance that we're addressing. And one of the variables also is the psychological makeup of the child himself, and the customization is important. Because no matter how much we talk about child development, the parent will benefit from learning, yet customization will have to take its role as well, because there is no one-size-fits-all, there is no one prescription for all kids.
Exactly.
So, the variable of the age, for instance, it is important that you recognize the different stages of development, whether it's psychological development, psychosocial, mental, etc., because that would affect how you would address the various stages. We can talk about this in detail later, but generally speaking, you have to divide the age groups. I think before 7 and after 7, taking the hadith in consideration. And
the hadith of Amuru awladakum bis-salah?
So the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, "Muruhum bis-salati li-sab'a wadribuhum alayha li-ashra farriqu baynahum fil madaja." Command your kids to pray at age 7, spank them if they don't at age 10, and separate between them in bedding by age 10 as well.
Right.
So the 7 and 10 here, and it is actually rather interesting that in terms of mental development, the classification of Jean Piaget of the mental stage, or the stages of mental development, considers 7 to be a milestone and considers 11 to be a milestone. 11 is a milestone of the development of abstract operation and thinking, and 7, or about 6 to 7, is the milestone for the development of non-abstract operation and thinking in the physical world, versus the abstract one by age 11 or so. So before 7 is one story, after 7 is a different story.
Right.
Certainly a child early on in the first 2 years of life, that is a child of, that is sort of testing the world, trying to figure out if he can trust it or not. It's called trust versus mistrust, the stage of trust versus mistrust, according to Erik Erikson, from a psychosocial perspective. This child will have needs different from the child that is past 14, for instance, that is going through the development of identity stage, through the early teenage and beyond. I would say that early on, you infuse trust. You certainly have to give them a large dose of love and a large dose of friendship early on. That is not friendship as a teenager that you will
Right.
take as a friend, that you'll talk to as a friend, but rather more love, yeah. And building that trust early on. The age of between sort of 7 to 10 to 11. It's an age
Allow
that
me, Sheikh,
requires a lot of
to
discipline.
stop here and stay in the important age category from until 7, and you mentioned the variables. So let's stay here and let's move to Mr. Hisham. Sheikh Hatem mentioned the trust, and this is one of the prime states. The scholars say children need to develop, and maybe it's the very first one. Could you tell us more in depth about that, and the important prime states that need to be developed in children, and the role of parents here, especially in the early childhood? Yes.
Well, actually, for further development to happen at an older age, there are certain, as you said, and as the Sheikh said, prime states that need to be there. First of them beginning is basically trust, and this is a stage where they learn to trust their caretakers, the world, and actually have a willingness and an openness to depend on different resources, whether these resources are external or internal. And so when trust is fractured at a very early age, then they stop at this stage of development. Although the child grows into an adult one day, but they are stuck at this stage of development, and they can't go over it unless there is some kind of corrective action. So some of the other very important prime states is confirmation and disconfirmation, as an example. The ability to say no to things and say yes and welcome other things. What parents basically, what some parents do is they take away this ability from a child at a very early age. So when the child refuses something like a relative trying to kiss them, to hug them or whatever, and the parent says, well, it's not good to say no. You can't say no. And so the child grows with this sense on an unconscious level. They think, okay, so I can't say no. So then as they grow, they'll find that there are very important things that they need to say no to, like injustice, for example, like lack of competence, like many other things. And they won't be able to access this no. They'll always be at the okay stage, no, yes, no, and or no. One of the other prime states, and basically this is what signifies humanness, is curiosity, and this is displayed in small children. As they crawl, they always put everything in their mouth, and basically it's not because they're hungry as much as this is the way that they explore the world. And so if a parent starts scolding a child because he's fidgeting with something, or because he's trying to climb over a chair, or trying to figure out how a toy works, and breaks down the whole toy and makes a big mess, when they stop this sense of curiosity, we end up with societies basically full of zombies. People just get up in the morning and go to work, do whatever they have to do, and come back. So what's being killed here is curiosity and the ability to imagine and be creative and innovate, and with very, very small behaviors that the parents can do consciously or intentionally or unintentionally. They can spoil the future of a child.
Right, but allow me to stay with you, Mr. Hisham, and these are very important points you are mentioning, but sometimes there is a thin line between, letting your child discover and allow him to build his imagination and be curious, and danger. And many times you find parents cannot control themselves if they see the kid doing something that they perceive as dangerous. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but this is how they perceived it. So So this thin line, and it also must be related to the issue about confirmation and disconfirmation. Maybe some parents would like to see their 2 or 3-year-old child learn from the very early ages that if their grandfather, for instance, comes, then he has a certain respect.
Of course.
And if this friend or or that relative comes, then so how do we allow the children to be free, to be able to say yes and no, and to explore, but at the same time not put them in in danger while watching, or not make them teach them how to respect the elders, how to and so on. Well, it's a thin line. Sometimes you feel it's a thin line, and it causes a lot of confusion and also fights between parents.
Yes. Well, let me say first that parents always have the best of intentions. Okay, this is a very important thing, because we always come down on parents really hard when it comes to child development, but they always have the best of intentions. As far as what's dangerous and what is not, we as parents we sometimes tend to overdo it as far as what is supposed to be and what is not supposed to be, what's dangerous and what's not. So if according, like the Sheikh said, it's all according to variables and context and the time and the age. So if what the child is doing will cause him immediate danger, like sticking his finger in the, so you can't, don't feel free to let him stick his finger into a a socket.
We shouldn't ignore everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then there are certain things that could be manageable, things that may cause minor injuries, for example, like climbing on something and falling, or like trying to taste something and so on. So this very thin line has to be according to the context, and not to be overdone as to limit the child from moving freely or exploring
that's understood.
the world around him or her.
Sheikh Hatem, you mentioned the variables, and a very important word you mentioned, the customization. So that gives the parents the room to maneuver and to deal, and that means, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm playing with my child all the time and I'm bringing him all he wants, and then I started to discover that I am giving him the love and passion, but he's becoming sort of thinking very highly of himself, who's going to be arrogant from a very young age, then I would have to interfere and start balancing this out. And vice versa. If I'm trying to teach the child that not everything you want I will get to you, because this is life. I mean, adults know very well that it's not everything that you can't get everything you want, and in fact our religion also tells us you can't do just whatever you want, and there are rules. So is this what you meant by the customization, and could you tell us how to deal in different cases if the child is we find him overconfident, or if we find him less confident?
Yeah, well, I think that in order for you to be able to move from point A to point B, you need to be aware of where point A is and where point B is. And so you have to really have a good understanding of the reality of the nature of your child, and to correct that nature or the negative inclinations, because we are born with positive and negative inclinations as human beings, and that's the test in this life. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. Blessed is he in whose hands is the dominion. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير, and he's capable over all things. He who created life and death to test you, who's better in action. And so the negative and positive inclinations are basically tests for us. So you need to understand your child's negative and positive inclination. You need to sort out the map of your child, his personal map. And then you need to say to yourself, I need to move to point A. Point A is your target, and sometimes your target may be exaggerated. And if you truly understand the strengths and weaknesses of your child, if the child is not really good at math, just forget about him being an engineer. He doesn't have to be an engineer. He could be like too many other things. So work with the strengths and try to work on the weaknesses to some extent, but understand that we as human beings have weaknesses and strengths. And if you look at how the Prophet ﷺ used to address those mistakes done by children, look at the hadith of Amr ibn Salama, for instance, in which he says that I grew up, in the household of the Prophet ﷺ, and I used to eat with him. So I was eating, and I used to eat from all sides of the dish or the pan. كانت يدي تطيش في الصفحة. So the Prophet ﷺ said to me, يا غلام سمي الله وكل بيمينك وكل مما يليك. O young boy, say Bismillah and eat with your right hand and eat from the side that's next to you. And that is basically starting with positive reinforcement, because negative reinforcement is actually starting by telling him what is right before reprimanding him or rebuking him for doing what is wrong.
That was Abdullah ibn Abbas? Or was
no, that's Amr ibn Salama.
Okay.
So so he said to him, say Bismillah, eat with your right hand and eat from the side that is next to you. And it is very brief and concise. He can remember it, and he did remember it, and he reported it thereafter. So he was able to give him very short, concise advice. It's not like a long lecture. But it is very, expressive of what he needed to tell him. And he did not mention anything negative. He didn't tell him, what mess are you doing? But he said to him, the right way to go about this is to say Bismillah and to eat with your right hand and from the side that is next to you. Now, does that mean that you're going to always be doing this? You're going to never have negative reinforcement? That's also unrealistic. And the problem is sometimes, and as Brother Hisham also mentioned, that sometimes we get a little bit hard on the parents. Sometimes intellectuals, they live in a bubble isolated from reality. So they keep on telling you about theories and about this and that, and the reality is that some children will need to be disciplined. Right. Positive reinforcement. What if I say this 200 times and nothing happens? Am I just going to keep on repeating it? The definition of insanity is to repeat the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Yes, I'll repeat it a few times because for a child it may not sink in from the first time, but eventually there will need to be some negative reinforcement. There will need to be some limit setting. And the limit setting has to be also proportionate with the danger, the age of the child, because you have to leave some room for the child to make a mess. After the trust and mistrust stage, you go through the initiative versus guilt. Basically, will you take the initiative or will you have shame and guilt? And if the child is trying to eat with a spoon and every time they're trying to eat with the spoon and they make a mess and you prevent them and you feed them yourself, well, they will be late to eating with a spoon. They will be late to depending on themselves and eating with a spoon. They will develop a little bit of shame from their actions because they think that they are not up to it. And the same applies to multitudes of other applications. So in this case, limit setting will be don't sit him in the living room if it is carpeted. Why don't you just keep him in the kitchen? So if he made a mess, he can basically easily mop the floor and it's over. Right.
The negative reinforcements, Sheikh, you talked about, are they limited to a certain age category, or can they be in the early ages as well?
They can be in the early ages, but also, the tone, the facial expressions, the whole context has to be sort of sensitive to the age. So when Al-Husayn radiallahu anhu picked a date from the dates of charity, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, kikh, kikh. We say this, kuch.
Right.
أما علمت أننا لا نأكل من الصدقة. Have you not known that we don't eat from charity, and that we don't eat from the food of charity?
Right.
And so this is negative reinforcement, but it is quite mild, quite appropriate for the age. It's just kikh, kikh. Have you not known that we don't eat from charity?
The Prophet ﷺ, when he used to pray, he had Al-Hasan and Hussein jumping on his back. Is
Yes,
that correct?
yes. And he used to carry Umama, the daughter of Zainab, during the prayer, put her down, and when he stood up, he would carry her. And he would walk out of his home, for instance, with Umama straddling his neck. He would put her on top of his shoulder. Right. And certainly something in an environment like the Prophet ﷺ was in, this was extremely progressive.
Right.
Extremely progressive.
Right.
Even nowadays,
so
if you do this, people will stare at you.
So if somebody's praying now and then a child comes, we shouldn't, a 2 or 3 or 5-year-old child comes, we shouldn't brush him aside and say, hey boy, go to the last, go to the last row, because the Prophet ﷺ himself carried his grandchildren.
Yeah.
Mr. Hisham, you started talking about the prime states. You mentioned the trust, the confirmation, disconfirmation, and you also mentioned curiosity. Any other key prime states parents should be working on?
Yeah, but I would like to take one of the points that the Sheikh mentioned.
Please.
And it was how Sayyidina Muhammad corrected the action of Amr ibn Salama, and how he did it with Al-Husayn. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that parents do is when they correct action, they target the child himself. So if it wasn't the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the parent would have went, okay, how can you do that? Don't you know it's bad to eat from the plate the way you are doing? Regular people or good people don't do that, and so on and so on. They keep on scolding the child. And so what this does is a simple thought like you are bad or so and so turns into a belief. Now a belief about himself, the self of the child. So once this belief is into the neurology of the child, it starts manifesting into behavior. As he grows up, that's exactly how he's going to act in life.
Subhanallah.
As a
because
person.
We remember, and each one of us, of course, has his or her own experiences. That when I was used to be. My parents used to tell me when I was a boy, Muhammad never lies. He never lies. He never. This is what they used to say. Of course, I used to lie sometimes. But when you grow up, it's just they made you love this character, this sifa, this character, and they told you are that. You are that. Although you were not always that, but when you grow up, because you were always told that, it becomes part of you. At least, of course, astaghfirullah al-azim, please, I hope that everybody still lies. We hope we all stop lying. Even there's nothing called the white lie. Sheikh, we'll go. I don't want to go and leave the issue, but at least it builds something. Is that overall you're not a liar? Okay, at least because you were told this when you were young. Right. Allow us to take a short break and come back with Sheikh Hatem and Mr. Hisham and continue our discussion. Stay with us. Assalamu alaikum.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Ask Hoda.
Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to a new edition of Ask Huda.
I have 2 questions.
please go ahead. You can read it in Arabic, and you can also understand the meaning in your own language. The different tafsir and the interpretation of the meanings of the Quran are available in almost every language that exists on earth by the grace of Allah. The water of Zamzam is for whatever intention you drink it with. Salih from Egypt, his father has the way, and he asked about how can he help him. Very good question.
Can they give a zakat to any of the dawah centers?
The ibadah or the act of worship is a part of the unity of worship. It has to be paid to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in accordance with the guidance of His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
As everyone knows, today Arabic is considered as very important, very significant language. How can we produce the sound, the state of voicing, place of articulation, and manner of articulation? So in Arabic, the words which are written are pronounced.
We will learn how to write and pronounce Arabic letters correctly in depth. Explanation via board and presentation with many other important factors.
And we have today more than 300 million people speak Arabic language. Not only in the Middle East, but you can find a lot of people speak Arabic language in Asia, Europe, North America, and in South America.
What are you waiting for? Grab your notebook and pencil and stay tuned for Learn Arabic at Huda TV.
You are never alone. You are never alone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. Don't forget to call us here live in the program on 00202 38 555 248 or 249. The numbers will be appearing shortly on the screen, and also to email us on familyissues@huda.tv. We're still in the company of Sheikh Hatem AlHaj, Dean of the Sharia Academy of America. He's also a pediatrician, and Mr. Hisham Hassan, who is a self-development coach. Sheikh, you mentioned something before the break about if your kid is not good in math, then he could be good in 2 million other things. But sometimes, because the child knows that this is very important to his father or to his mother, being good in math or being good in sports or in anything else, he stresses himself because he wants to impress them. But as you said, maybe he just doesn't have it here, but he has a lot of other good potential in other things. How do we, convince him or her, the boy or the girl, that no, we are happy with you, we love you, you don't have to be good here, but sometimes maybe he or her won't believe, because he kept hearing us throughout the years talking about how math, for instance, equals intelligence, or how being good in sports equals being a real man, or courage.
Well,
how do we take the step back? I mean, how do we change gear, reverse gear?
Yeah, in fact, one word that you said is important to comment on, because some people equate math with intelligence, and that is true in 1 out of 8 types of intelligence, because intelligence comes in 8 different types. One of them is the logical and mathematical intelligence. Logical and mathematical intelligence is one type of intelligence, but there is also linguistic intelligence. You can get the best mathematician in the world, but they may not be able to hold a conversation with you. Linguistically, they are not intelligent. There is social intelligence, there are interpersonal relations. People who work in businesses like customer service and so on, they have to have that type of intelligence. It is more important to them than mathematical intelligence. Spatial intelligence, navigators and pilots and so on. There is also bodily intelligence, your ability to have good control over your body. Great sports people and surgeons and so on, they need to have bodily intelligence. There is spiritual intelligence. Usually they say musical. I had to say instead the spiritual intelligence, because you could be have a PhD in physics, but spiritually you're quite behind. So there is not one type of intelligence. There's even intrapersonal intelligence, your ability to handle yourself, to have a holistic approach to bring together your mind, heart, and body in harmony, so that you don't have inner conflict inside of yourself. So
it's called inner intelligence?
That is intrapersonal.
Intrapersonal.
Versus the interpersonal amongst people.
I have a sense that this is the most important one. I don't know.
Yes, I think it is extremely important. Your ability to deal with yourself, to handle yourself. I also have to, to comment on whatever it is that you mentioned about how your parents used to tell you something that you grew to believe thereafter. That is something that even Allah does in the Quran. Allah says, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And do not grieve and do not be powerless when you are the supreme, if you're true believers. So during times of persecution, during times of defeat and so on, Allah is telling them, you are superior if you're true believer. Because superiority here is not by how much wealth you have, how much power you have. It is by moral superiority, your moral advantage, and so on. So you are the supreme if you are true believers. And the Sahaba, grew up to that statement and grew into it. They were always committed to being the best nation brought forth to humanity. As Allah said to them, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas." You are the best nation brought forth to humanity. I have just corrected Amr ibn Salama. It is Omar ibn Abi Salama. Amr ibn Salama is Omar was the son of Salama, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from a previous marriage. You're welcome.
Mr. Hisham, the other prime states, please.
Okay, so it's very good you mentioned the part of how the kid tries to excel in math and stress himself because he wants to please others. Because one of the prime states is responsiveness. It's the ownership of our two inner powers, thinking and emoting or feeling, and our two outer powers, which is speaking and behaving. So if these powers are somehow taken away from the child at a very early age by being told not to speak all the time or not to act a certain way, or it's not good to feel this or to think this, what happens is they move from their ability to be response-able or have the ability to respond to the world to being moved around by external events. So when they start pursuing their passion, depending on whatever type of intelligence that they have, they don't actually go for what they can deal with, but with whatever is going to make other people happy. And so they end up getting to this mess of doing for others, or speaking for others, or feeling and thinking for others.
I can tell you from a personal experience, like I had to go into medical school because everybody expected that I go into medical school. My passion was for studying Islamic studies. That was my passion from very early on, when I even was 9 years of age, and I went back to it after I finished medical school, even though I continued to work as a physician.
But you're happy you went to medical school.
You make the best out of your situation, I guess. You'll sort of accept your situation, and but that was not really my interest at the time.
But it definitely added to you.
It could have added some, yes.
You're taking the parents' part.
No, because I have a similar story.
Okay.
Because I had some very good grades in high school, so I studied engineering. But then just 2 years after that, I went to media, and this is where I love but I do say that studying engineering, although I didn't work, has really benefited me. I do admit that.
I think college education is just to give you a case.
Maybe it's the intrapersonal.
Yeah.
There's an intrapersonal skill here. Mr. Hisham, Sheikh Hatem, when he talked about the 8 types of intelligences, I feel that this is a topic, a very important one, and it could be a topic for an episode. How we work on discovering, first of all, our children, which type of intelligence do they really possess, if we are intelligent enough to discover it, and how to develop it, how to work on it. Could you expand on this?
Okay, so as far as the theory of multiple intelligences, it will need a program on its own. And it's not really my area of expertise. I just know enough about it to do what I have to do with the self-development. So I couldn't tell you much about that. But I can tell you what they shouldn't do so that the children can find their true passion in life, or the things that they can do best. So stopping the kids' development at any of their prime developmental psychological developmental states is what would stop the child from finding his true passion or excelling in the area that he excels in. So if he has more direction towards art, for example, but then his ownership is taken away, his responses are taken away, and he's pushed to do something else, then this child will grow up not to be a very happy person. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has every newborn gets born on fitrah, right? So there are 2 parts of that. There's the part of aqeedah, of course, and tawheed, and then there's the part that has to do with the khilafah on earth, and it's having the skills, abilities, and potential to make real this khilafah. And this is basically what happens, or why they develop on a very early stage as far as the prime states. We have a saying in neurosemantics that a self-actualizing person is not a human with something added, but it's a human with nothing taken away.
Beautiful saying.
Yes, and it's very true, and I believe it goes with accordance with Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all the abilities and potential to actualize in the future. But then when the parents somehow start interfering, or society or culture start interfering with this development, whether it's trust, whether it's the ownership of the responses, whether it's self-esteem and valuing themselves for who they are, not what is around them, when the parents interfere with that, that's when they can't really pursue their passions or can't excel at a certain area.
All right. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Final comment, Sheikh, and Mr. Hisham told me a few moments ago, you're taking the parents' side now, and we've been so harsh on the parents. So can we tell the parents something that will make them feel better as we close out here, Sheikh?
I think that that there are 2 answers, to really simplify this. There are 2 answers to any problem. The first one is to have the right objective, and the second one is to have the right approach. So you set your target and you know how to go to it and at it. And I think that the ultimate objective for all of us Muslims should be the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We really need to make sure that we are doing justice by our kids for the sake of Allah, and really ask Allah to make us just towards them and ourselves and the community. And the second thing is to have the right approach, and that is dependent on more acquisition of knowledge, more, to acquire more knowledge, about the procedures, the approach to get to your
Sorry
target.
to interrupt, Sheikh, but Alhamdulillah, you've the point was made to you, dear viewers. That's all the time we have, dear brothers and sisters. On behalf of you, we thank Sheikh Hatem AlHaj, Dean of the Sharia Academy of America, also a pediatrician. Jazakumullah khairan, Sheikh. And we thank very much Mr. Hisham Hassan, self-development coach. Jazakumullah khair, Mr. Hisham. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Family Issues. Don't forget to email us if you have any comment or suggestion on family issues at huda.tv. Until we meet again, same week, same time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Never alone, you are never alone. Through sorrow and through grief, through happiness and peace, you are never alone. So now, as you long for your past, prepare for your future, but knowing nothing's gonna last. You see, this life is but a road, a straight and narrow path to our final abode. So travel well, O Muslim, and paradise will be your home. And always remember that you are never alone.
اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت.
I only know there's no one I must worship but Allah. The only one who created the universe, oh Allah. The one whom I should believe, the one whom I should obey, only Allah. Oh Allah, you are the light. He's the one who always gives me everything in my life. The only one who we ask for guidance and forgiveness. Oh Allah, guide us to be in your way. Oh Allah, you are the light. Oh Allah, you are the light. You are the light. You are the light.
Huda TV strives to bring
friends with our children, play with them, and when should we impose our authority, and what should we do with our kids? I mean, the kids we want to be, but maybe by instinct we want to see them better than us in the future.
Alhamdulillah, well, the answer to this question depends on multiple variables. One of the variables is the age of the child. One of the variables is the particular circumstance that we're addressing. And one of the variables also is the psychological makeup of the child himself, and the customization is important because no matter how much we talk about child development, The parent will not...
hadith of أمروا أولادكم بالصلاة.
Yeah, so the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, مروهم بالصلاة للسبع واضربوهم عليها لعشر وفرقوا بينهم في المضاجع. Command your kids to pray at age 7, spank them if they don't at age 10, and separate between them in bedding by age 10 as well.
Right.
So the 7 and 10 here, and it is actually rather interesting that in terms of mental development, the classification of Jean Piaget of the mental stage, or the stages of mental development, considers 7 to be a milestone and considers 11 to be a milestone. 11 is a milestone of the development of abstract operation and thinking, and 7, or about 6 to 7, benefit from learning. Yet customization will have to take its role as well, because there is no one size fits all. There is no one prescription for all kids.
Exactly.
So the variable of the age, for instance, it is important that you recognize the different stages of development, whether it's psychological development, psychosocial, mental, etc., because that would affect how you would address the various stages. We can talk about this in detail later, but generally speaking, you have to divide the age groups. I think before 7 and after 7, taking the hadith in consideration. And
you are never alone. You are never alone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for staying with us. Welcome back. Time now to introduce you to our distinguished guest panel. We have with us Sheikh Hatem AlHaj, Dean of the Sharia Academy of America, and he's also a pediatrician. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh, and thank you for being with us. We also have with us Mr. Hisham Hassan, and he is a self-development coach. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Hisham. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Sheikh, allow me to start with you. When we talk about how to parent our children from the viewpoint of Islam, when should we be...
Is the milestone for the development of non-abstract operation of thinking in the physical world versus the abstract one by age 11 or so. So before 7 is one story, after 7 is a different story.
Right.
Certainly a child early on in the first 2 years of life, that is a child of, that is sort of testing the world, trying to figure out if he can trust it or not. It's called trust versus mistrust, the stage of trust versus mistrust, according to Erik Erikson, from a psycho-social perspective. This child will have needs different from the child that is past 14, for instance, that is going through the